Bienvenidos nuevamente, Reto Aceptadores, o ahora son
Eso no existe.
coreocrativos, sí, ahora son los coreocrativos. Espero que estén bien. Estamos nuevamente en otro episodio más del Reto Aceptado, en el episodio número 49. Ya estamos casi a los 50, ya estamos entrando a esa edad donde pues, uno empieza ya a ese midlife crisis, de que uno no sabe dónde va a ir, y tú sabes todas esas cosas buenas que ya mismito. Jerry está más cerca que yo en cumplir a llegar a ese punto, pero ya mismito nos toca todo. Anyways, hoy es un episodio bien especial porque vamos a estar hablando del reto de la digitalización de la democracia. Y para hablar de eso, hemos traído a la mesa a nuestro gran invitado, Franck Nouyrigat. Frank, él es un gran amigo mío. Yo lo conocí acá en Puerto Rico, él vino para acá a Puerto Rico, hizo varias iniciativas, es un emprendedor que ha tenido ya sobre 20 años de experiencia emprendiendo en diferentes iniciativas, también es programador. Su área es más la tecnología, pero pues tiene experiencia en diversas áreas y principalmente pues además de esa experiencia de programación, pues fue el cofundador de Startup Weekend, que es una iniciativa global de emprendedores que Jerry trabaja con la organización que representa a esa iniciativa aquí en Puerto Rico. Así que, Frank, definitivamente un honor tenerlo aquí y tenerlo invitado. Así que ahora vamos, antes de comenzar con eso, Jerry, no sé si quieres decir algo antes de, porque estoy ahí speed trailing. No sé si quieres decir algo.
¿Qué es speed trading?
Que estoy a las millas ahí, que no te dije ni hola, ni saludo, ni nada. Estoy ahí a las millas.
Tranquilo.
So,
No saludamos telepáticamente.
ok. Pues sin más anticipación, entonces, antes de comenzar, acuérdense que estamos en todas las redes sociales como...
O sea que más anticipación.
Sin más anticipación. Pueden encontrar en las redes sociales como Jerry Stories o como Fabuloso Boricua. Nos pueden enviar sus retos y sus diferentes opiniones sobre el podcast, que siempre estamos abiertos ahí. Así que ahora voy a switchar a inglés oficialmente para presentar a nuestro guest, Frank. So, Frank, it's an honor to have you here. How are you doing today, Frank? How are you feeling? I hear you're in Turkey.
Sí, todo bien y muchas gracias para la introducción. Y in English now, yes, I'm currently traveling and escaping COVID in Turkey, which I highly recommend.
Okay, let's all just go to Turkey then.
Is Turkey is Turkey COVID free, or what's the situation there?
It's COVID low. They're really I came from France, but like compared to France, it's so much better. Like, you know, every single restaurant you go a temperature check. Every single people in the street wear a mask.
Yeah.
So people are responsible there.
They are very responsible. Like, I remember I went through, I'm doing some tourism too. So I was visiting a tiny village and they shut down the whole village because there was like 2 cases. So they shut down things at the village level. So yeah, really impressed.
Got it. And this is not happening in France. They're not checking temperature, not doing any of those checks right now, at least where you lived at.
Oh no, that was awful.
Oh my God.
Music festival with thousands of people gathering together. And like,
oh my God.
And they are starting to change. They are starting to change the law now. Just figure out that, you know, maybe we need to wrap up and things. But yeah, you know, it's to me, it's also a great way to, maybe a segue, but it's a good way to benchmark, you know, countries and democracies, and it's very, very interesting. And we can dive into it a little bit later.
Yeah, and by the way, thank you, Frank, for that segue. I think it was very smooth. So the challenge for today is the digitalization of democracy, and we brought Frank into the table for this conversation because Frank is also currently working on a nonprofit organization called Electus, which he's going to definitely talk about a little bit more later. But basically, it focuses on how can we reimagine democracy for the digital age. And make it so it continues to evolve as it has always done. I think, and I was hearing, Frank is also, by the way, launching a podcast very soon. I don't know if I can say that publicly yet, but
Sure.
Okay, yeah. So if it wasn't, it was too late. Yeah, if it wasn't, it was too late already. But yeah. So Frank is launching a podcast very soon, which we'll be for sure sharing once he does. And he's going to be talking about these subjects a lot more. So if you're interested in that, you can definitely go check out Frank's podcast when he launches it. But yeah, basically, I think right now, this challenge is very important because, and I chose it because democracy has been facing some very particular challenges that it might have faced before, but I think due to technology and the scale that technology brings to the connecting of the world, it has made these challenges a lot tougher for democracy to tackle. And I just wrote down a quick list of the things I think that have caused all this outrage in terms of democracy being kind of challenged, especially recently. And I think it all started, at least the big main event that we all recognize now, is this whole scandal with Cambridge Analytica and all this data scandal that happened through social media, where the elections were manipulated and there were people trying to look into how they can manipulate the democratic system. So Frank, from your perspective, was this the first thing that kind of like started this train or this pattern of democracy in the eyes of the world falling apart? Quotation marks, because I don't think that, but yeah, what do you think was the first thing that caused this outrage or this falling apart of democracy?
Well, I think it's interesting. I don't think democracy are falling apart, but I think we're facing challenges, and we can see it, especially now in the nation when things are so divided. And it doesn't look like things are getting solved, and it doesn't look that there's much hope, to the point that people start to disbelieve the whole system. And so I think it's a deeper question. It's like, if you throw away democracy, then what do you replace it with? Do we want a system that's closer to China? Could be a question. But if you believe in democracy, then what do we do? And I think usually the way it works is someone else come and say, oh, everything was awful before me, but if you vote for me, things are going to be better. And it goes on and on. But I think now what's interesting is how does technology impact our democracy? Because it's already starting, but it's starting outside of the system. So as you mentioned, like social media is a big part of it. So you mentioned Cambridge Analytica. But I mean, you could also talk about Black Lives Matter. You can talk about any way that people are organizing themselves or influencing or being influenced, on an existing system. But I think the broader question is, the system is quite old, and democracy is a living thing. Like, when's the last time we rethought about how we organize things? And so that's it's kind of a broader discussion.
Yeah, I think that's a great point you bring to the table, Frank. And it's something that I definitely giving thought to, which is there seemed to be a lot more effort in the past to constantly better the democratic system and improve it. And I'm not saying it's not happening now, but I think in the past we were a little bit bolder in the steps we took to make the system better and improve it. And maybe we've gotten to the point where the changing or the updating of, be it constitution-wise, be it the lawmakers or whatever segment we want to apply that to, I think government itself has turned so big and it has gotten used to some sort of stability that now it's kind of hard to update the system in a more faster or accelerated way that technology would suggest us to do so, because technology moves really quick. And in the world where technology is the main gateway for communication and for a lot of things that democracy is dependent on, it needs to also change quickly.
Why does technology influence like law, government, like right now? Like why would government, like, I'm not saying I'm against it, I'm just asking, like, why would government need to be as fast as technology in terms of like updating the system? Because I mean, I think technology, primarily is being used as a way of communication, and it gives a lot of visibility to a lot of social problems, if that's what we're talking about right now. But should it, like, I guess that should influence like maybe public policy and like laws that, like, for example, in terms of Black Lives Matter, like there definitely should be passing laws to like prevent those kind of situations. But are we talking about like actually saying, or like of like government saying, oh, okay, so there's like, millions of people right now trying to tell us that, you know, Black Lives Matter and that we should matter too, like it should matter to us too. So since we have that in turn, I'm trying to put in words like what's the really like, I guess, a technological solution to that. Because like they would say, oh, okay, let's change this, and then like what should happen, or what would be the ideal situation? Like should there be like a, I don't know, like a system that allows to I don't know, take in all that I guess freedom of speech, or like, you know, that protest, or I don't know how to actually like make it tangible, but like take all those things as input and say like, okay, this weights in this way, and so now like I don't know if it's like a literally like an app or whatever, but like should like what does that technology look like? Because like I still don't see in my head like, okay, that's how it's gonna influence, or that's how government is supposed to keep up, in a sense. Like I don't know if all of what I said made sense, but
it did.
No,
but it's a question.
It makes total sense, and I think we can start with maybe the basics, like what's technology, and yes, I mean, I agree that technology is not the solution; it's just a tool. And when I say technology, like you can think of anything. I'm currently in Turkey, but it used to be Greece here like 2,000 years ago, and you know, and they had this system that they invented, which, you know, led to a democratic system, you know, where people would, you know, meet in a forum and decide of, you know, what's good and what's bad for the community. And this thing evolved like in 2,000 years, but not that much until 1776, for example, in the US. But you have to remember that in 1776, you had only 2.5 million people.
Right.
And let's say, and at that time, the people who created the nation worked on it. So Madison being one of them. The way he did it is he asked his friend Jefferson, who was in Paris at that time, to send him all the books he had about democracy. He read most of them, and then he was like, okay, let's build a democracy with, you know, a bicameral chamber with representatives and things like that. And what I mean is all these things, you can think of them as technology. So when I talk about technology, maybe a broader one would be like, you have to think as you know, chamber of representative as the result of technology, which was, you know, horses and paper. Before paper was, you know, before writing, like the way you could manage civilization was way smaller. You could not manage 2.5 million people. But the thing is, now we have the same technology we had for 2.5 million people to manage like 300 or 400 million people. And it seems like it's a general observation, but it looks like whenever you reach 1 billion or 500 million, you end up with very, very centralized governments as a temptation. There was a good article about Hariri about that. And I think COVID, if anything, is accelerating that, where you're like, oh, wow, China managed it well. Well, the US looks like chaos, or pretty much any democracy. So now the question is, if you were to create a government from scratch today, you know, would you end up with the same system? You know, would you end up with representatives? Would you be like, okay, I need to elect someone every 5 years, every 4 years, and then they need to go there, and then we need to talk with our people, and then exchange paper. And so that's what I mean by the technology. It's not an and for me, like it's not a mean for an and. It's just, the idea is just to say, you know, what would happen spontaneously if you would do it the other way. And to me, these movements like, you know, Black Lives Matters or like Greta are kind of an illustration of what would happen, right? Which is you have millions of people who feel like they are not being heard, who spontaneously organize themselves and who are pushing a message, but it's still like, it's still not democratic, right? It's not like I voted for that or I've got a representative. Like it's more like usually like the movement happens, but then what happened next? Like how does it structure itself? We're not there yet. The take I have on my side is just to focus on one very specific thing, which is elections. But I think the broader theme is, you know, how how will democracy evolve? Like when you read the original text, when you read Hamilton on the Federalist paper, like they clearly say, like, we have this constitution, we write it down, but it's obviously not going to be, it should be alive, it should keep evolving, and you guys don't they do recommend not to stick to these things and to feel free to evolve it.
Yeah.
And right. So that's the general discussion, if that helps or if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think to the point that you both make, I think specifically technology, as you mentioned, Frank, I agree with you that technology is definitely more of a tool that could be used in the favor of democracy or against it. It's a double-edged sword, but I don't think we're doing a good job at using technology in favor of it in terms of the government having a feedback loop where they have all these forums, they have all these open conversations like it happened in Greek about what are the issues that matter, and having that constant feedback loop to integrate that into government and turn it into laws or turn it into real reforms for the system. So I think that's the first. I think at least with technology, I see that as the first thing that's happening, because as for instance with the Black Lives Matter movement, as you mentioned, Frank, I think it's possible that it's happening because we live in a democracy. But as you mentioned, it is not organized as one in if on itself, which means that it doesn't have all these systems in place that democracy has to guarantee a voice for everyone inside of the group, and an organized system that is proven to work at least at a smaller scale, which is, for instance, what you mentioned, which we had in 1776. I don't remember the number you said, but we had only barely a few million people, or
2.5 million.
2.5 million.
2.5 million.
Which is a lot less than the close to, I believe it's 600 million now people, or 500 million that live in the US right now. So yeah, so overall, I think that's one of the I think overall that's one of the main things that I see, at least in terms of technology, which is communication tools in general.
And so who has been?
Yeah. But I think
what's a successful model then? Like, because I've heard like the term e-government. Is that a solution? Is that how you manage a lot more people in terms of like democracy, or is it something else? Does the answer lie somewhere else? Because, for example, if we put in perspective Puerto Rico, I could be wrong, but in my perspective, definitely like the biggest issue right now is corruption. Like, how do you actually, handle that? And I guess the answer always will be transparency. And I guess technology could easily bring that. But at the same time, like, how do you actually, put the system in place to kind of like make people actually want to be transparent? Because you could have all the tools you want, but if nobody wants to use them, then it's really not going to work either way. So yeah, what do you guys think about
that? I think two things. Number one is there's no solution right now. Like, to answer your first question, like, what's the best system? We don't know. And to me, what's amazing is how come we're not researching it? There should be a field or a little bit of our money that should be spent on, can we do better? And right now, the way we do better is someone get elected and say, that's the way, out of millions of possibilities, and we're all just going to go that way. Right. Which, to me, like, I wish it was like we could do experiments, we could do a lot of things. But to take an example, like, and I don't know if that would be the right solution, but for corruption, you could imagine that people get paid in, some token of some sort, like using a crypto
tokenized,
blockchain-based coin.
Right.
But what you could do then is to be, whatever you do, I'll be able to see exactly where it's been spent. You could even imagine that down to your taxes, where you would pay in, I don't know, crypto Rico coins, and then you can say my 1,000 went here, like, 10 went to that school, 5 went there. You could even check it yourself. So technology, like, today allows a lot of bad things. it's used also in a banking system. Like, I mean, banks know exactly where money is.
Yeah.
But I think the question is, and that's where it gets really difficult, is what's the motivation of a current system who has power to give away power? And so it's more, we always end up with a more philosophical question, which is, if my job is to be a representative, why would I vote, or why would I do anything that would basically make my job useless? If my job is to write laws, or if my job is to interpret laws, why would I support anything that would, eradicate the need for that? And usually the way it works is through revolutions, unless the government wants to evolve. So that's why I don't have an answer for that, but I think at one point it will happen. Like whether it's now in 200 years, like, I mean, at one point where technology is so much everywhere that people will, what would happen today or tomorrow if you had a movement that represented 200 million Americans and that say, we don't care what you say, we voted for that person to represent us outside of any system. Like, what does it mean?
Right, I see. Yeah.
Has there been any point, and I ask both of you, where a government has been self-aware enough of its flaws and of its need to improve constantly, where it has done so, or has this not been done in history before?
Yeah, they're amazing governments.
Estonia to me is interesting because they enable e-voting. Switzerland too. I think most of the experiments you see happen in small countries, but also young countries. Like Estonia was born after the collapse of USSR, so instead of a 1776 constitution, they kind of built it in 1989 or at least 1991, I think.
So super.
So so that's it. So there's, it's like if you're a developer and you have to write something from scratch using the latest technology, or you got a job in a bank and you have to figure out how to take, an existing 30 years old system and fix it. Yeah.
Okay, that's an interesting thought. So Estonia and France are France and Switzerland are good examples of governments that have done integration of technology into their systems. And how does that work out for them?
So it's interesting. So in Estonia, for example, you can vote using your mobile phone, and you have what's called an e-ID. So the idea is every citizen has an identity that's digitalized. They can use it for many things, and it does have legal implications. So if you log somewhere, the log is like if you walk to an office. And the implications so far, I think, are just, it's a very tiny country. It's like 2 million people or even less. The funny thing I remember, though, it's a funny one, but you would imagine the young people would use that a lot more. And the result was actually the young people prefer to vote with paper.
Really?
Because to them, it's an experience. Like, it's the first time I'm going to go vote, I want it to be different from my daily life. And so they do enjoy actually going voting.
Sure.
With a piece of paper. As for Switzerland, it's different because they are managed at the canton level, which is like the county, if you wish. And they have this very specific system that anyone can, push anything. And so they have a lot of elections happening all the time that, people can participate with. I think they can vote also to fire people or politicians they don't like.
Really?
So what happened is also very low participation because there's so many elections happening all the time, but a very high satisfaction in the system because they do feel like people are being heard. But again, I feel like there's a need for a lot more of this experimentation. I mean, if you look in the US, like for the primary and the caucus and the shit show it was, like, people just seems to just organize this thing last minute, and it's, I think it doesn't help to reassure people that technology is a solution. And there's a good argument to say that technology can also be dangerous. So all these things are just to take into account. But I mean, again, as you said, like corruption, like there's many ways you can avoid corruption with technology. There's also a lot of ways you could avoid crime, for example. But like, again, like, do we want camera everywhere? All these debates, like, I think I think it's just gonna happen. The question is how, and and with what result. And so
what we're seeing is that the issue primarily is that there's not a position in government, or there's not a acknowledgement that there needs to be more effort in terms of, and thought in terms of, how we continue to improve democracy and integrate these digital systems.
Yeah, and I think right now the way we do it is we take the existing system and we say, how can we do what we do today and put it on the computer? But I think you can also really think deeper and being like, why are we doing this thing this way? Why?
Yeah.
Again, why do you have representatives? And you have representatives because back in the days where you needed to ride a horse for 2 months to go to Washington.
You need someone to go for you.
Exactly, it made sense. But I mean, now that you have a phone, like, do I really need someone to represent me? Like, what about so to give you an example, like,
wow, I've never looked at it that way. That's a very interesting fact.
Yeah.
Yep.
But giving you examples of things you could do differently, there's the concept of fluid democracy, where the idea is to say you can vote, you can pass your vote to anyone. So you can have anyone to be your representative, and that person can ask for anyone to be their representative, and etc. So you can just say, like, on that matter, on that subject, like, I'm going to give my vote to Fabian, and now Fabian has 100 votes and he represents 100%, but maybe Fabian wants to give its 100 vote to someone else, etc. And it kind of chains up to representatives, but very dynamically. So that's called fluid democracy. Another one is called, I guess you could call it quadratic democracy or quadratic voting, where the idea is to say you have votes, you have credits of votes, so you have 100 votes, and then you can spend them on whatever you want. And so if something you really, really like, you can spend all your credit on that subject, but then you will not be able to vote on other things. Or if it's something you really, really dislike, you can also have negative votes and say, I really, really care about this thing and I really, really don't want it to happen. So again, like, there's many ways you could reinvent these things. But the question is, maybe these systems are awful. I don't know, like, maybe they would lead to dictatorships or awful things.
Yeah.
And so, but again, like, there's democracy is a living thing, and not realizing that what's happening today is that on one side, you have a group of people using social network to self-organize themselves, to push messages. And on the other side, you've got something that's like, a very old and very respectful institution. But I think we start to see the limits of 1776 technology versus 21st century technology.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a great thought. And I think those are both great things that we have to test out. It's like you're doing a startup, right? You need to validate, you need to see if it works out. And some experiments might go wrong, some might go well. So it's all about just testing and constantly having that feedback loop in the system. So cool. I think that the next thing I want to talk about, and I want to talk about it because I know specifically you, Franck, have a lot of interest in this topic, is voting. So why do you see voting being such an integral and important part in our democracy?
I mean, that's obviously the core of it. I mean, democracy is power to the people, by the people, in its roots. And so the way you express democracy is through representation, through voting. But right now, what we see is people don't vote anymore. People don't care. Like, I don't know if you guys vote, or especially in Puerto Rico, where there's like, a deeper debate like that.
Yeah.
Do you feel like your vote? Do you feel like when you vote, it's something useful? And so I think what we see is all across OECD's countries, so the developed democracy, I think it's 42% of the people, 43% of the people trust their governments.
Yeah.
The vast majority doesn't even trust their governments, like more like close to 60%. And so our thinking is to say that one of the root of that is because, people don't believe votes are useful. And so focusing on how do we gather these votes, and how do we test them, and how do we make them in a way that people feel like voting actually matters, then I think is a good angle.
Yeah, it's a thing of doing the groundwork to make voting work again in terms of work. And I think it does work, but there's clearly some flaws in the system that for instance, here in Puerto Rico, there was a governor here called Garcia Padilla, which what he did is that he passed a law right before the elections where he said to the people from other countries that were here illegally, he said, hey, even if you're not a citizen of the United States, you can still vote in Puerto Rico, and I'll give you a license for that. I'll give you a license even if you're not a resident here in Puerto Rico. So what happened was that he did that on purpose because what he would do is they would tell them inside of the voting, the centers where they give them out the license that, hey, what you have to do now is you have to go to this place to get your voting permission to vote. And once they came in there, they would tell them to say some certain things, and they would automatically know that he was going to vote for his party, for the party of the current governor. And he kind of like used the system to create this, like trying to cheat the system to gain more votes. So clearly technology, for instance, with things such as blockchain technology and technology such as these that create unique identities, especially digital ones, might be able to help with these issues. But I agree with you, Frank. I agree that voting is a very important thing. And what should we do in a world where hacking is so common? Because that's another thing that comes up, right? We can do e-voting, but what happens if somebody figures out how to hack the system and break it in a way where they modify the elections? Such as happened, and maybe it didn't happen directly in Cambridge Analytica, but something very similar happened where technology was used to influence.
So I think there's two or three things here. Number one, when you talk about blockchain or things like that, the truth is blockchain itself is not really, doesn't really matter for voting technology. Like encryption does. And paper is still one of the best things we have. The issue is paper costs a lot of money. And again, it's not necessarily scalable. And there's a debate in academia, but like some people believe that we can do electronic voting. Some people believe like it's more difficult. What I like in blockchain is just that it's decentralized, and so I think philosophically and irrationally, I take an extreme example. Let's say I'm organizing an election between Israel and Palestine for peace. If a server is very secure but hosted in one country, then the other country would dispute the results by saying it's been corrupted, even if the technology is correct. But if you decentralize it and everybody has access to it, then this argument, even if it's false technically, at least becomes could be counter argued philosophically by saying, no, look, it's everywhere. So that's the first thing. I think the second one is Cambridge Analytica, like influencing the election. To me, it's interesting because I think anytime you have elections, the goal is to influence them. If I'm a politician, like you can go back in time, like before I would go on my horse again and I would go village by village and I would say how great I am, and I will try to influence people and say you should vote for me instead of that guy. Then later on you had the radio, then later on you had television, and now you have social media. And so sure, like I can use social media and target people and change their mind, but I mean, to me, it's connected to a general issue, which is the issue of education. It's like if people are well educated, you should not fear people being influenced because they can still think by themselves and they are educated people who can make choices. Now, if you believe that the population is not well educated and that whoever talks to them can influence them, that's another debate. So I think the debate of influence is also a debate of education. But whether it's social media, whether it's television, whether it's radio, whether it's speech, it's always a game of trying to influence people. But to me, that's the current system that forces that, right? Because the current system is here's a representative, vote for him or don't vote for him. But you could have other system, like there's a researcher we talked to in Stanford who what he does is he looks at discussion in social media, and then he gets from the discussion like the general trends of what a group of people might think, which is interesting too. So again, you can think in different matters. But I don't think influencing the election is the only debate. I think education is also a big one.
I think maybe the thing that happens specifically in digital means is that these people, and this is always going to happen, but especially in the digital age, it's very easy to get to know someone to the individual level in terms of what they like, what they don't like. And this is something that even if I go as a politician to whatever country and I go to whatever town and I know what these people are interested in, I know what they like, I can do the same thing. I can literally tailor my message to them, which is, I think, something that's fair. But there are things happening under the algorithm and under all the wording and all the strategy that are deeply concerning to me, at least in terms of how they use psychological techniques to maybe make you believe something that otherwise you might not believe. So it's very easy to expose people's psychological tendencies through knowing their interests and knowing all the specifics of how they operate and think. And I think that's the issue, right? How can we educate people where they can identify these biases that are created and the biases that we all have, and how they can go past them and try to be unbiased, which is very hard to do, and I would say impossible. You're always going to have a bias, but try to be at the point where you make decisions based on what you honestly think is best, and not what someone made you believe it's best. What do you think, Jerry?
I agree, and it's not going to get it. I'll pass it to you, Jerry, but just to food for thought, it's not going to get easier. I mean, like you're gonna have generative AI that can generate article that looks very plausible. You guys look at what GPT-3 can do. You're gonna have it's Google. It's OpenAI text generation neural network. So now it can generate article. Like I read the whole article where at the end of the article, the guy said, "I didn't write it. It was written by an AI."
Oh my God.
And I wouldn't guess, like, and then the same, you very soon you will have videos, where the people you could see, presidential candidate doing something awful, but it was, generated, like, also. And so
deep fakes.
The truth is going to be harder and harder to get. Yeah, exactly. And so it's not going to get easier, that we know.
Wow. Which is actually why content is super important. And I think, but yeah, no. But I think I don't know if this answers the question or like, but this is how I thought about it is like, I think, like as technology has been evolving, like probably this has been around like since forever, but it's becoming more and more present as technology evolves, is that like whether we want to or not, like media controls the masses. Like this is how you actually like share messages across like millions and millions of people at the same time. Like there's it's not possible to actually from one person actually to access like every single one without the use of media. So I think, I don't know, maybe it's a problem that has to be solved at that level. Maybe it's also a problem of the actual like people actually not being shit like human beings, like actually being like trying to do better. But I guess the question is, like it's really hard because like there's so much at stake. Like why would you want to give out power? Like why would you want to take care of somebody else's problems? Like why would you like I think the whole problem here, and I was gonna ask earlier, like blockchain, for at least for me, who is like a little bit distant to the topic, even though I'm tech savvy, the issue will always be like, okay, but how do you actually get people to use it? Like you could have the whole system in place, but like I'll just decide to not spend my money there. Like I'll just do it in cash. Like and then okay, so let's the solution there would be, okay, let's stop printing cash so that nobody at some point can even use cash. But then like how do you make like banks like tell them like, hey, you can't bring a single dollar again in the history of humankind. Like every single dollar is going to be useless in like a year. And so like I don't know, like, and obviously like these things take time, like, and it's really hard to put in perspective in a short term, you know, kind of time frame. But yeah, but like, and since I can't, you know, actually like I don't know, not even see what's the possibility there, and the you know the realness of
maybe
you know,
maybe I can do maybe I can do science fiction, but I like what Snowden said like a couple of years ago. You know, he said it was once impossible to imagine countries without kings. A time will come when they look back and say the same of presidents.
right.
And I do believe that's going to be the case. I honestly think that I can give you a glimpse of what I would see as being a possible future, where every single laws, for example, would be either interpreted by an AI or either written in code. There could be versions of them. They will be managed by a machine who could manage millions of them and tons of cases. A lot of things can be protocol based. So again, like in a way, you would just have a government that would be replaced by some gigantic, you know, network of programs that just manage the way the country works with zero humans in it, or very few, but the only humans being you. And so
That's
then
why
you
he
don't
said
give the power
sci-fi.
to another human. Yeah,
Okay.
Right.
that's extreme, but you know, and regarding the money, I mean, it did happen in the past, but you know, I think India recently actually just shut down a bunch of Indian money. I can't remember like the name of the Indian currency. All these things are possible, but I think again at the root of it, as you said, it's a debate about power. So our approach on our side, like what I see and what I'm very excited about is at Electis at least, is we're trying to see there's all these grassroots movements emerging, and they're not necessarily democratic. And so what we'd like to experiment, or what we'd like to do, is to offer voting technology for all of them, so they can organize election and whatever type of elections they like, whatever type of voting they want. But so they can transition from just being a media to becoming like, you know, a legitimate power. And by doing that, and by having all these thousands of experiments, like the vision we have is to say that we'll be able to share the results, the best practices, and maybe something will emerge out of that which would be useful. You have to imagine, like, also that why do we organize election at a country level? Why not worldwide election? We could organize the first worldwide election with 1 billion or 8 billion people like participating and saying, you guys vote for or against that thing. Like all these things are technically possible today. We're just legally can't do it. But again, like there's a lot of doors that can be open. We are connected as human. Like never. Like I think now it's almost 50% of the world is connected through a social network of some sort. Like that's half of the world today. It's crazy. You're a couple of degrees away from people in Turkey where I am. But I think the other barrier we have beside the legal one is the language one. But that barrier is going to collapse very soon too. I think 5 years from now, or at least 10 years if we're pessimistic, AIs will become so good at translating things that you will not have a need to speak another language. So again, to me, you take all these things together, and it becomes very clear that there's going to be a revolution of some sort.
Yep.
So
I mean, yeah. I can't. Sorry, Fabian.
Go ahead.
I think, as you said, like revolution is literally revolution. It's just that like you can't really actually put it into perspective until it actually happens.
Yeah. And when I say revolution, I mean it at the first day or third, first origin of the term, which is, going around and going back where you were, but, with the same basics of democracy with new technology. After that, I don't know if it will be a peaceful and a natural revolution, or if it's going to be a more angry mob, social mob of self-organized revolutionary.
Right.
But to me, there's absolutely no doubt that 100 years from now, the way our democracy works will be different. But by the way, there's another outcome that's possible, which is democracy to disappear and to be replaced by very centralized government. Harari, I think, wrote a piece about that in the case of COVID-19, like to talk about the temptation of centralization, of centralized power, because it looks more efficient, and democracy looks a little bit more chaotic because everybody has their say.
Right. So this is a debate I think that's happening right now, and I don't want to go too much into this because we're gonna be 3 more hours here. But right now there's 2 main political systems in the world. There's communism and there's democracy, and it's always been, at least as I see it, it's always been a constant debate, be it politically, be it economically, be it innovation-wise, of what system is best. And mainly, for instance, I see this is one of the best and latest examples of this is, besides the COVID-19 thing, was a space race to get into the moon. And this was this huge battle between the United States and democracy on innovation and going and achieving that goal. And then the Russian side, which is the communistic side, which were also in this race to get to the moon. And it was kind of like a show of hands of who was capable, what system was capable of deliver and get to this result as soon as possible, or in the best way possible. And at least in that case, the U.S. won the battle. But now in COVID-19,
no, it didn't.
well, now what do you mean?
The U.S. didn't win the battle to race to the moon.
The U.S. got first to the moon. Oh, come on, man. Anyway, so I mean,
it's true. I mean, it's just facts. Like, I don't like it's not entirely true. Like, you could argue that, yeah, maybe the man to the moon was like the first, recorded thing, like an actual thing, but like everything else, like, was done exactly like a lot faster by Russia. So I mean, who knows, really?
Well, I think that's another debate, and we could talk about more in another episode. But in terms of the COVID-19, which is my point, COVID-19, clearly communistic countries have managed a lot better than democratic countries. And this is due to the fact of centralization, which allows government to move quicker and to get more restrict and violate things that here in democracy would say, no, you can't touch our right to assemble. You can't touch our right to practice religion. You can't touch any of those things. In communism, this is something that can be touched and can be completely prohibited to the people to do based on the better of the common good, at least in the eyes of the whatever governor or whatever person is managing government. So to Frank's point, to get back to Frank's point, I don't want to go on a monologue here, but to get back to Frank's point, and this is what I want, kind of the point I want to do, is that the world has been now at least resumed in these 2 main forms of government. And eventually there's 2 ways we can go, right? We can continue to live like this for the rest of our lives and for the rest of humankind, or eventually one kind of government will rise and one kind of system will unite the whole world, and the whole world will function under it. And maybe when we go to different planets, maybe Mars will have another political system and Earth will have another one. And maybe they don't have to be the same because they're two different planets. So maybe one works well for one and one works better for the other one.
Bueno, pero bueno, yo tengo, I actually
Go
have
ahead, go
some
ahead.
very interesting thoughts about that based
Go ahead.
on anime.
Go ahead. Go
But
ahead. I'd love to hear. I'd love to hear.
but before I go into that, I want to say that, like, I think there's a third option, and the third option is like there's always a need for, I don't know if this is at the human level or at some other level, but like there's always a need for a balance. And so and I think the balance into those two political systems is like what's best and what's right. Like I think those are two completely different questions, and like we could argue all day like which parts of democracy are right and are I guess que eh, justo for people, and like actually gives power to the people. But then like you could also argue like how inefficient it is, and how we could debate for years for something that we could have solved in like a minute or so.
Yeah,
so
it's like they all have their ups and downs, and I'd love to Frank to get into this, but but before that, there's ups and downs to everything. Like even if it's like, even if the stupidest decision you make, if I'm right now in my home and I say, oh, will I work from my desk or will I work from my couch? If I work from my desk, I might be more productive, at least in my case. But if I work from my couch, I'll be more comfortable. So it's always a thing of, there's ups and downs to everything.
Right,
But I
right.
see it, to put it lightly. I see it as in all the Mario games you have. Mario is always the one that has like the balance. He's not super good at one thing, but he's good at almost he's average at almost everything. Like he has the power curve, which usually you can see in fighting games and all that, is usually balanced out. And it's no coincidence that usually the character that is used the most is him, because he has, of everyone, he has balanced out all of them the best. So
Right.
maybe it's not a question, which is happening a lot in the public eye, in the public debate. Oh, communism, no. Democracy, no. Whatever. And you see this especially in the political side of things in the United States, where Republicans are like, oh, these liberals are communist, and they don't want the communism, and they don't want all this socialism and all this. And then you have the Republican side, which is more the capitalistic side. And this is another conversation, but clearly we have to start looking into what are all the systems, just like Jefferson and all these people did when they were redacting the Constitution, and see which are the best elements that we can combine out of all the systems to create a better one.
Right. I mean, but yeah, es que también eso, that's a whole issue on its own.
Yeah.
Again. But
Frank, I'd love to hear your input in this.
but real quick on
I know.
Well, I think, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, Jerry, but I think maybe we can start off, because we went on a little talking spree there. But I think we can start off with what do you think about this debate about between communism and democracy, or overall in history and right now in the world?
right.
Well, I mean, communism to a certain point is a democracy. I mean, if you look in China, I think a number of members of the Communist Party is 90 million people. There's 90 million people, within the Communist Party who vote something.
Yeah.
I think I don't think a vote or representativity is like. I think communism is a deeper philosophical debate about against capitalism versus democracy. I think it opposes more capitalism as a system to democracy. But China is also a Confucius country, and so it's a deeper one, right? It's like it's the Chinese population. Like I think general philosophy is to say the group is more important than the individual, while in the Western world the individual is more important than a group. And so it's a very deeper debate, but we certainly will see which one is best, and which one is worse. Like, but it's not because something is bad now but it doesn't mean it cannot be improved, and vice versa. I think also the reason why Asian countries manage COVID better is because they've been exposed to it earlier, so we're better prepared. We're kind of at first contact here, and So there's a lot of things, but at the end of the day, like I think, and by the way, we talk only about countries, but I mean the governance of companies are interesting too because they're closer to North Korea. You know, the way companies manage is some kind of dictatorship in a way. You volunteer to join the country, but the general subject of governance and the general way we organize things, I think, is going to reemerge thanks to AI, thanks to maybe blockchain, thanks to other things like and as usual, I'm pretty sure we'll see a lot of progress made by the military on how you better organize things because that like if you look in history, it's usually the military that the way companies are organized today is very close to the way you would organize armies in the past with a general, like that would be your sea level, etc. So again, I think there's going to be a lot of changes, and I have no idea what they will be. But what I do believe is that by offering people a platform to do whatever experiment they want, then we'll see the emergence of new things. And so I like the idea of what we do being, change democracy where you are. It could be little things, even the way you organize your podcast. You can ask the people like to participate. Maybe like there's so many ways you can rethink governance because at the end of the day, it's what it is. Democracy is nothing else than it's a very specific kind of governance, but it's governance. It's a self-governance at a massive scale.
Yeah.
So I don't know. These are very general, discussion and answer. And on our side, we're down focused on, building these solutions or providing the one that are already existing and just getting people to use them and make them as stupid simple to use as possible. So anyone can organize their own legitimate election at one point.
Yeah.
Right.
Wonderful. Well, I think we can definitely
so you could do that in your communist party, or you could do that in your, in your democracy. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's also a debate if any system is purely democratic or any system is purely communistic. I think all systems have a kind of like a hybrid model where they integrate elements of each system. So I think, I think things will get better. But I think the key takeaway here is that we clearly need to make a bigger effort to integrate technology into our government and political systems, and things such as
or at least self-organize yourself. I mean, if tomorrow you guys can organize an election in Puerto Rico with outside of a government with 5 million people, 2 million people, that would mean something.
Yeah. Exactly. So so I think that's a great way to segue into our last segment of what will you do? And Frank, I know we didn't tell you this earlier, but we usually do like a little introduction to this segment, and we do like and now it's in English, but we usually do like, what will you do? Like if it was a little game show. So you're more than welcome to join our our verbal introduction to this section. Joey, are you ready?
Yep.
Okay. So 3, 2, 1.
¿Qué tú
harías? What would you do? Okay, that's been the best. That's been the worst one we've done yet. Jesus Christ. Okay, so Frank literally unmuted and then just muted again. Jesus. Okay, so the first question here is, what would you guys do if you led technological efforts in government? Which would be the things you would do to make this integration work better? Maybe we can start off with you, Frank.
I would just, I guess, implement and give a digital ID to everybody.
Okay.
I think that's a good first step.
Okay. Great. And you, Jerry?
I guess I would try to I don't know, find a way to get, I guess, essential systems or like essential services onto some kind of platform and like make that the standard.
You mean like do like an online portal for all the government services?
maybe that's an online portal. I'm not sure what that would be, but definitely like maybe like you could resolve everything, like everything from getting like your driver's license to, getting, your medications, like all of those things, like that would be like a system, and that would be the standard of how you would go about to use those systems, how you would go about to use those services. Sorry.
Got it. And this is obviously Puerto Rico has a big issue on this. So yeah, I completely understand.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So next question. What would you guys do to best educate yourself, or what are you currently doing to educate yourself for the next voting, the next elections happening in each of your countries?
Wait, what?
What are you guys currently doing to educate yourself in terms of the candidates and all the election process going to happen very soon? Because we mentioned a little bit about the issue we have with Cambridge Analytica thing, the media thing.
Can you guys vote now in Puerto Rico?
Yeah.
We'll be voting on November.
Yeah, well, we don't know what they're gonna do. Honestly, it's kind of like a shithole right now, much like in the States. But yeah, we should be able to. At least that's what the Constitution said that should happen.
Get it.
What about you, Frank? Are you doing anything right now to look into your candidates, at least in your country, in France?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I just became American last year, so what I'm doing right now is I'm trying to figure out how can I vote, and it's not an easy process because right now I'm traveling and I'm outside of the US, and it's like I contacted the embassy passed me another contact I need to so. I thought that participating to voting would be easy, and it's not that easy. So before I can even choose a candidate, I need to figure out how I will vote.
Okay, and but how have you done this in the past? Do you see debates? I imagine you read a lot of articles.
To be honest, I think I don't know. I think I'm too disengaged now. I don't. I don't think the debates matter as much. I see politicians that they'll say anything to get elected, and so I have little hope. I'm trying to just look at it from, that's why I'm working on what I'm doing. Is I really don't believe much into the current system, but I'm really trying hard to help change it, and at its core, I'm fairly disengaged, in politics.
Got it. What about you, Jerry?
And for me, like this is something like I've been thinking, like I think the past month or so, is that like why isn't there some place where I can actually, at the very least, evaluate like, the candidates' proposals. Like I can't go somewhere like online and actually read like, oh, this person's proposing to do X, Y, and Z. Like, why isn't that like something, normal? And like, and I guess the all exchange and communication is verbal at the moment. And so, and so that for me is like very hard, because then like, as Frank said, like anybody can say whatever that they want. Like for example, like to put it in the context in Puerto Rico, like I've been trying to figure out like who am I gonna vote for in the next elections, because there's the debate of like, hey, are we gonna change for good, like bipartidanism, but like then what is really the outcome of that? Like, for example, there's a really like the next strongest candidate, it's this woman called Alexandra Lugaro. And like there's like a really polarizing opinion on her, because like she has a lot of academic preparation, she has a lot of experience, at least in law and business, and her ideas are very, very logical. But then you also have the side of her that she also like doesn't have, I guess, political correctness or whatever. Like she actually doesn't. know how to handle, people who are already in power, and like you can't just say like, hey, you're out. And she doesn't have like a political career, so she doesn't have that experience. And so yeah, and I guess, and I'm trying to debate in myself, like, how do I make a decision, like an informed decision? But apparently that's not what they want you to do. And so obviously the means that you would, go about to actually make an informed decision aren't there. And so it's very, very hard to like actually decide who are you gonna vote for if it's not you just fanning over someone, at least in Puerto Rico. And that's a very, very big problem.
Yeah, and there's no accountability for a politician who says something that she or he was going to do and then eventually doesn't do it. So there's no guarantee that everything that the person says in his election campaign has to be done. So I think that's another big issue as well.
Yeah, and you can, talking about innovations, like, or at least there are things that exist in the US, at a certain level, it's called recall election. But you could imagine a system where if people don't keep their promise, you get a shot at firing them.
Recall election. Right. What is this? This is an online platform?
No, it's when
you basically tell people like, hey, no, we want to do another election because this person is, it's not working out for us.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, but you could imagine like a system like that, which to me would be cool, like to be, hey, I like what you proposed, and I'm going to keep you accountable for it. And if you don't, then I'm just going to fire you.
Yeah, right. I mean, I think that's how it's supposed to be, right? Like,
so it's like in Switzerland, for example. But yeah, you see, it's like, how come these kind of things are not happening? It's not happening because back 200 years ago, that was very difficult to do that. But now with my phone, I could literally be like, you know what? Today I want to fire you. You're fired.
Yeah, you can fill out petition.org form, and hey, this is what I want to happen, and literally, there's been things.
The difference between an election and a petition is the petition, like you're like, maybe it's not as secure and as safe, and so that's why I go back to, you need some digital ID of some sort to be sure that it's not.
Got it.
I can bet you this year, whatever is going to happen, I bet you the election are going to be highly disputed. I think people will doubt the results of the election a lot. That's and that's going to be very interesting. And so that's the thing, is how can we go to the point where you don't doubt that people really voted?
It's gonna be a shithole, esta elecciones in Puerto Rico. Like it's just like
you'll get Kanye West or someone else.
I mean, like it's we could argue like that could be better. Like, who knows? Like maybe in the long term,
maybe Bad Bunny wants to be candidate, or
like and like shit, if he actually decided on that, like I don't know what would happen, honestly. and it's very actually, this is something I've been thinking about, because so recently, specifically Bad Bunny, he did like a short version of an album of songs that he, like, for some reason weren't gonna come out like officially, and so he just put them together in this like type of EP or album type of thing. And literally, like, on the last song, he does this kind of like if he was like announcing something on a radio station, and he announces his next album or something, and supposedly it's correlated with the elections. And so, like, who knows what he's trying to actually do there. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if for some reason
but you see, right before you said you would like to see the program, but now you're like, fuck yeah, I'll vote for him. Like, we go back to the media.
Right. Exactly. That's completely true.
And I think 10 years from now, whoever is going to be president of the United States is whoever is popular right now on TikTok. Think about it. Is that the future you guys want?
I mean, right. It sounds, I guess, illogical, but then, like, for example, like, this is something as well that I've been thinking about a lot of social media, is that, like, now I'm trying to kind of like understand social media in the context of, or I'm trying to make a metaphor out of like geography. Like, I'm actually starting to see like social networks as countries, and within them they also have their own customs and culture, and that's like super real. And when you actually understand those things, you can actually influence a lot better, and you can create in this case media, to actually have a bigger impact on those platforms. And when like and then if we go even further to what you like, to that and what you said right now, like, it's totally possible that like the influence of like whoever's really really big on TikTok is so big that like you could argue that, hey, why isn't that person like the one who's telling us like what should be done or whatever. So it's really really crazy right now.
Well, maybe this is due to the reason that, at least here in the States, there's a culture of attributing a godlike energy to public figures. And maybe the issue is that we don't look into what they actually think, what they actually believe, what they actually propose. And since we are so familiar with them, since we feel so, because that's part of marketing, right? That's one of the most important things in marketing, is you feeling comfortable with that brand or that person. And usually relatability. And usually these people, the ones we feel closer to, are the ones that are on TikTok doing dances every day, and we just like it, and we comment, she likes it, she responds and whatnot. So very interesting.
Yeah, but it's like it's popularity versus like representativity. But it's I like also, I think what happened in Belgium to me was also an interesting example of what's possible. I think Belgium didn't have a government for 2 years.
Really?
And he went very well.
Oh my.
So
how does that work?
Just scrape it, like you guys, like, you just go to your house and do nothing for the rest of your life, and then we'll just do something else.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So I think we can go to the last question. We're almost out of time, so I want to respect Franck's time for being here with us. So the last question is, and I think Franck already answered in the beginning of this segment, is and before starting it, how can we make change happen from an individual standpoint to improve government through technology?
Yeah, I think on my side, my call for action is whatever movement you have, even if it's 10 people, 100 people, 1,000 people, think about, like, is your movement, is whatever you're doing a democratic thing, or is it more of a dictatorship? And if you're interested about it, like, try to test at your level. There's plenty of solutions out there, and more things like that. Like, just can you try to experiment at your level the way you'd like governments to behave?
And what are the core values of democracy? I think that maybe this is something we had to mention earlier, but like, what defines a democracy? Maybe it's a system where, at least here I have that it's a thing where you have representatives, where people elect representatives. So you by saying that you make sure that your movement represents a democratic system, you mean that it has some kind of representative structure, or what do you mean by that?
The heart of democracy is freedom. It's power to the people, and it's to build something for the people. The opposite of it could be a dictatorship, could be kingdom, or could be something like in between. Like, but again, like, whether it's having a representative, or whether it's having people to participate, to express themselves, and to make decisions as a group, is what defines a democracy.
Right.
Got it. Okay, that's great. And you, Jerry?
I think I would start by caring. Like, I think that like like from the first of the conversation, Frank said that like, you know, like 60 something % of people just don't care. They're like whatever happens happens, and I don't really, you know, I'm not even putting my thoughts or my time and effort on that. And I think that's probably the biggest issue right now. Like people just don't care enough to actually get involved enough to actually start changing these things.
Or maybe they care because I think the Black Lives Matter movement it shows in a huge way that people do care.
But that shows that they care about the cause and they don't really care about what solves that.
Exactly. Well, you know, I would say that maybe they want to find for solutions. I agree that there's a disproportionate amount of people criticizing the system and people creating solutions to make the system better. And I think that's always historically been so. But now,
and I would say,
yeah.
So I would say real quick, it's not that they don't care; it's that they don't vote. Why they don't vote is another question. Maybe
Exactly.
they don't care. Maybe they don't like the thing. Maybe they don't believe in it.
Exactly.
But what we know is we have the democracy. That's the power to the people by the people, where 60% of the vast majority of the people are not electing, or not like so that becomes an issue. You know, if people are so disengaged, then it even like start to, and we go back to the original discussion, our democracy, like, you know, how many people really voted for our current president, and is that enough, you know, to because at the end of the day, like, you want people to live together and to agree on things. And right now, obviously, we're at a time where never before, especially in the United States, the country has been so divided. And and again, it's a real threat. If we can't solve these divisions, then you know, I don't know what's gonna happen, but obviously bad things.
Yeah. So I second Frank's opinion. I think people do care what the election, and maybe they don't care about the election, but they do care about making a change. It's just that, as Frank mentioned, maybe it's come to a point where they don't trust it, where they don't find they don't feel that the system represents what they want, and they don't feel their voices heard.
Right.
So
how
can we make that happen?
But they also don't like, and I'm actually putting my example, like my own, like I'm talking from my own perspective or experience or whatever. Like this is the first time actually that I'm actually putting an effort to actually educate myself on something. And I don't think that's the norm.
In terms of politics or what?
Right, in terms of politics, like
I was like, really? This is the first time you're actually putting effort to educate in something in your life, man?
I came into this world as a boy genius, so I didn't feel the need to actually read or you know,
very modest. Myself. Yeah, very modest, very modest.
No. On politics, like I'm actually trying to make an effort to, you know, take into my own hands that, like, you know, if something's gonna change, I need to change myself as well, in terms of like how do I go about, like, actually, you know, at least figuring out what, you know, each candidate is trying to say or is trying to communicate. But I don't think that's the.
What about you guys get a representative to come and debate with you from your audience?
A representative from our own audience or a politician?
From your audience.
Okay, that's a good one. I'd love to do that.
Right. I would also like to do that, but
okay, let's do it. Let's put it in the plan. I think it's a great idea, and especially if they have opposing views. So if you're listening to this right now and you think you have another perspective you want to offer, feel free to reach out, and we definitely love to have you.
If you want to replace Fabian, now vote for.
Cancel Fabian. All right, so I think this is a great way to end our conversation and kind of like wrap up with everything. It's truly been a pleasure having you on, Frank, and I think we had a great conversation. And especially with all the insight you have and all the things you're doing, it's really great to know that there's people like you working on making democracy better and improving it, especially for the digital age, and especially the voting aspect, which is very, very important. So on that topic,
I know, and hopefully
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll get to work more with Puerto Rico. And if I can make a call, by the way, if you're a student in a university or if have contact there, right now we're testing that at the university level. So we'd love to work with students or people who have an interest in computer science or political science in Puerto Rico. That'd be great.
Yeah, and I was just about to say that. Go ahead and if you want to mention something specifically, your social media or anything, you have the space now to do it. So obviously that
Puerto Rico needs a better democracy for sure.
Yeah. Cool.
Yep.
So if you're a student, if you're interested in politics, if you're interested in technology, reach out to Franck. We can put your contact details on the description below, and you can reach out to Franck there and see if you can contribute to this amazing organization that's doing the effort to make voting better and democracy better in general. So yeah, I don't know if you want to mention anything else, Franck.
No, es todo. Viva la democracia.
Viva la democracia. All right. Well, with that, then Jerry, go ahead. Well, I don't know if you want to mention your social media, Franck, or do you want to be an influencer, or is that still not a thing for you?
Sorry, what do you mean?
Well, if you want to mention your social media so people can follow you there and reach out to you. Yeah,
I'll share whatever you guys want me to share.
Okay. Cool. Well, we'll put it in the description then. And you, Jerry, where can we find you? Where can we get in contact with you?
Bueno, ustedes ya saben que me pueden conseguir como Jerry Stories en todas las plataformas habidas y por haber, especialmente en TikTok. Ahí estamos rompiendo. Así que vayan a darme follow en TikTok para que vean todo lo que estamos haciendo ahí.
And I'll do mine in English. You can find me on all social media as Fabuloso Boricua.
Eso no es inglés.
This is a name. This is a proper name. I cannot change my name. Anyway, so you can do Fabuloso Boricua on all social media. You can find me on Twitter, Facebook, Tinder, Badoo, everywhere you want to find me. I'll be there. So yeah, with that, I once again thank you, Franck, for being our guest. I want to definitely put all your contact information in the description. And yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next one.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Chao.
Chao. Gracias, retadores, nuevamente por ver este episodio del podcast Reto Aceptado. Nuevamente, oye, como siempre, tenemos que agradecerles a este hermoso espacio que estamos aquí grabando, que lo tenemos gracias a Coco House, que Coco House es un coworking space en el corazón de Santurce, que tiene espacios de oficina, espacios de trabajo y mejor que todo y lo más importante, una comunidad de gente que está creando cosas bien, bien cool. Así que si quieres conocer más de ellos, puedes visitarlos en cocohouse.com y en las redes sociales asimismo los consigues. Cabrón. Y el
Envíanos tus retos a retoaceptadopodcast@gmail.com.
Cabrón. Para eso te quedaste ahí 5 segundos empapado. Bueno, retadores, ya lo saben. Suscríbanse, dale a la campanita, follow, lo que sea que esté ahí, pues el botón que diga algo que sea similar a seguirnos o apoyarnos.
Subscribe.
Denle ahí.
Subscribe aquí. Subscribe y para que vean el episodio anterior aquí.